Hey everybody!
Hi,
Tate here,
this is Taryn.
and welcome back to Plant That Sis, the podcast where we talk all about plants.
P.S. We're sisters.
And we're sisters.
Welcome back to episode 3. We are so excited to welcome you guys back, obviously, and we're finally starting to really get into some stuff. Our first couple episodes were more introductory, trying to give you some context to us as people and what we got going on with plants. And now we're finally getting to dive right into an actual plant. So we are doing our very first honorary plant of the month. Just like employee of the month, their special parking space is in our quote unquote podcast studio that we DIY'd. It looks great.
Also, special places in our hearts.
Yes.
Because we love these guys. We love these plants.
So, our very first plant of the month, drumroll please, not really, is going to be String of Bananas. String of Bananas is a vining succulent that has little 3D bananas all along the string, quote unquote. So, the strings are the stems, has a bunch of stems sticking out of the pot, and it has these little, literally, it looks exactly like little tiny bananas. Not so much a flat leaf that's a crescent shape, but a true 3D tiny banana.
It's got some plump little leaves.
Little.
Yeah, little. Just, when I see it, there's that monkey part of my brain that just wants to pick them off. I don't know.
So I know we talked about this before, but Tate is our biologist, our in-house scientist. So she's done a little bit of research, a little bit of background info that she's going to give us on where this plant comes from and kind of paint the picture for you guys so you can visualize what it lives like in the wild.
All right. So, String of Bananas, its scientific name is Curio radicans. If you guys look up stuff about this plant on the internet, you may see it under Senecio radicans, but it actually was reclassified, I think, in 2018. So don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted. It's Curio radicans now. You know, us biologists just love to reclassify things all the time. So
can't help
there
yourselves,
you go.
Can ya?
Exactly. So String of Bananas was reclassified as along with its cousins, the String of Pearls, String of Watermelons, String of Tears, basically all the string of plants, and they were added to the genus Curio. So if you go online and look up String of Banana stuff and see Senecio, it's probably because it was using its older name. But anyways, more about the plant now. So the String of Bananas is native to the Tate province in South Africa. And like Taryn said earlier, this plant is a succulent. So just in general about most succulents is that they all evolved to survive in dry and arid environments where it doesn't really rain a lot. So when it does rain, it pours. And it will kind of randomly rain, and it doesn't rain a long time after that. So these plants, like most succulents, have evolved adaptations to conserve as much water as they can, since they don't really know when they're going to get it again, basically.
And that's why their leaves are so thick.
Yeah, that's why it's got some thick banana leaves, so it can save all that water. And that's what makes it a good houseplant, because it's real tolerant to drought. So, if you kind of forget to water it or something, it will probably be okay. You don't have to water it a whole lot. So like in the wild, when it rains, this plant will get soaked. It'll be super, it grows in like sandy soil. And we'll talk more about how to take care of this plant, but I'm just trying to get you guys to picture what it looks like in the wild. When it does rain in the wild, it'll suck up all that water and hold on to it as long as it can until it rains again. So it holds a lot of water. The String of Bananas is native to the Tate province in South Africa, which is like the very tip at the end of Africa. Again, arid, dry environment, like I said. So its leaves and tissues conserve water. Where it grows in South Africa, it's usually ground cover. So whereas when you see it in like houseplants and housepots, it will cascade over and it's really pretty. But in the wild, it just grows and spreads out along the ground. And basically what it will do is as it spreads out, it will pop out these they look like little brown bumps on them when you have them in a normal flower pot. But these little brown bumps will eventually sprout roots. And so as it spreads out on the ground, it'll just kind of spread out these roots and cover the ground. So it's almost like, what is that plant you told me about earlier, Taryn? It's almost like
Pony's foot.
Pony's foot, yes. If you know what that is, it's almost like that, but a succulent version. So they look really cool.
This is a real sidebar, but I was telling Tate, we were talking about this plant when we were talking through this episode, and I said that about Pony's foot. It's something we have a lot here. We live in Texas, so it's super, super hot a lot of the time, most of the time. And so we have a lot of that Pony's foot. I don't know what the actual name is called. I didn't research that for this episode because I just didn't. But I was telling Tate about it, and we just want to warn you, if you're going to try to look up that plant and Google it,
Don't
just
Google,
make sure, type in Pony's foot plant.
Don't Google Pony's foot.
You don't want to know.
Just don't do it. Just don't. Just,
it was a little...
I'll save you the trouble. I Googled it and I was like, this is not a plant. So yeah, if you know what that plant is, it kind of looks like that when it covers the ground. It's really pretty. That's another plant that if you put it in a pot, it'll cascade over. I'm sure we'll talk about this plant, Pony's foot, at some point in time. But back to string of bananas. It also has pretty shallow roots. So it's a ground, like I said, like a million times, it's a ground cover. So it pops out these roots, gets it anchored into the ground, and will keep growing out those long stems to grow as much as possible, essentially, as much as it can. It does bloom. It has these little cool white, apparently they're cinnamon scented flowers. I've never actually smelled one. Taryn hates cinnamon for some reason. Cinnamon. Something is literally wrong with her.
So this seasonal time of year, I can't even go shopping. Every store smells like freaking cinnamon.
I made the best pumpkin bread and I was like, you want some? And she was like, no. And
I really don't.
Fine.
It makes me feel like a Grinch in the holiday season because everything has cinnamon in it. And
it's okay. I don't like mint, and there's a lot of peppermint right now too. So, I can relate a little bit, but I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. But
you're picky.
Apparently, the flowers for string of bananas are cinnamon scented. So if you like cinnamon like me, that might be kind of nice to have. Mine hasn't bloomed yet. I'm hoping to get some, next year. But the flowers actually look kind of weird. They're kind of unique looking. If you know what a dandelion is, not the yellow flower dandelion, but the like the seed pods that come out of it, like the ones you pick and you blow and make a wish. It looks like that, basically.
So special.
Yeah,
so
special.
You perhaps got a tattoo of this on your upper shoulder circa 2012.
Yes, and like as they're blowing, maybe there's like an infinity sign in there somewhere.
Ooh, yes, or some feathers. It turns into feathers in the wind.
Yes, it turns into feathers, which turn into birds or something. I feel like I've seen those a lot.
Yes. And we're not hating. Live your life.
Yeah, not hating. Not a hater. I love plants, so definitely not a hater. So that's pretty much all the background info I have. I hope I painted like a good picture of what it looks like in its natural environment, because I feel like if we know more about where it just has adapted to survive, it will help us take care of them in our own houses and stuff. So I know Taryn has a string of bananas, and What's your experience like with yours?
Okay, so of course we love this plant. We both have it. We both love it. That's why we picked it as our first plant of the month, because it's going well for both of us. So I got mine back in, I don't know, probably May. And when I got it, I immediately repotted it because that's what I always did kind of towards the beginning of this year. I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Now I know differently that it's not that serious, but that's what I thought you were supposed to do. So I repotted it in some basic cactus potting mix. So if you get your normal all-purpose mix, you definitely want to either add a little bit of aeration, which again, we're going to talk about the actual care tips here in just a minute, but I planted mine in just some basic cactus potting soil in a ceramic pot and stuck it outside on my back patio, which is east facing and it's covered. So it would get morning sun and be pretty much covered all day. And she thrived. She's looking okay now, which I'm going to talk about, but she looked so good all summer long. She put out consistent new growth. It was incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I went over like when you got it, like right when you got it, and it was looking good. And then I went over like a week or two later, and it was already like growing a lot,
popping.
Yeah, it was popping. She was doing real well. She was real happy.
Yes, we had a great summer together. So she was one of the first plants I actually brought in when the cooler weather started happening in November, because of course I prized that sweet little baby. So pulled her in and I put her near one of my grow lights, and admittedly, she's not doing that great. I'm working on figuring out a new solution. I can tell she's not getting enough light because where the new growth is happening towards the end of the vines, you can tell that it's getting leggy, which means the bananas are getting more and more spread out. The reason you can tell that it needs more light is because that's the plant's way of reaching toward the light. And the bananas on the very ends are looking real small compared to the ones in the middle of the plant and up toward the base of the plant. So I can tell she needs more light. It's on my list of things to do, figure out how to get it. We need a pivot here. We got to pivot and get that growth back. So
it's got to be the light.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. The watering, I think, so far is going okay. So I just need to adjust my lighting situation now that I've brought my plant inside. But she did great all summer, and I did actually have a bloom or two.
Ooh.
I did in the summer. It was outside, so I couldn't smell the cinnamon, so I had no issue there. But these are definitely, I think most people feel this way. It's a foliage plant. We're here for the bananas. We're not really here for the blooms.
Yeah,
They're
and admittedly, the blooms do look a little, like, they don't look like your average, typical, like, flower.
Yeah, they don't really...
They look cool. I like the way they look, but they're definitely, like, not a typical flower.
Right.
So.
And I have done a few attempts of propagating. The first couple of attempts that I've done, I just took some cuttings and I did coil it up in a pot and stick it on top of the soil, and didn't really do anything for me. I think I've done it, 2 or 3 times, and it's all died. It all shrivels up and dies. I think my problem is I don't water it enough. I haven't kept the soil moist enough, and I think you have to do that for propagating.
Like when you're starting a new one.
Yeah, versus when it's an established plant with the root system, then you're not supposed to water it as much. So my next attempt, what I have going right now, is I took a few more cuttings when I brought it inside, and I am trying some water propagation. So I have just a little jar, vessel, vase, whatever you want to call it, of water, and I took a few cuttings, and towards the bottom where I took the cutting, I took several of the bananas off, because if you let those sit in the water, they're just going to rot, and that just looks gross and smells gross.
They get mushy.
Mm-hmm. So you take all of, or
like a rotten banana.
Just a couple of the bottom bananas off and stick that in water, and it is popping out roots for me. It's still kind of new and young, so I have to keep you guys updated on how that's going.
You definitely will.
Yeah, hopefully better than my soil propagation, because those were not as successful, which is fine.
I almost wonder if you I don't know how this would look and how this wouldn't look the prettiest, but I almost wonder if you put an empty pot with soil in it next to the plant and let it root while it's still attached to the main plant, if that would work too.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think people
and
do that.
And then once it's established, you could probably just cut it off, and then it would be its own thing.
You can make that kind of cute.
Yeah, I bet you could. Just an idea.
Yeah, you do it in the right way.
Yeah.
That would be kind of hard, I guess, if it was hanging, unless it was trailing all the way down to the ground. Wow. So you just put a bunch of pots at the bottom.
Can you imagine if it started establishing itself in the ground and then grew out towards it? It looked like a waterfall. That looks so cool.
You know what would also be cool? Okay, I know we're not talking about string of dolphins today, but Tate and I growing up had a water-themed or ocean-themed room. And we had...
Taryn wanted to be a marine biologist back in the day.
Yeah, LOL. So not my life now. Not a scientist. But I really thought... And the saddest thing is I was so inspired by SeaWorld, which you guys don't even want to know how many times I've watched Blackfish, the documentary. But anyways, this is all beside the point. It would be so cool. The good old school, early 2000s beads.
Oh my God.
Tate and I had some beads going into our room. Our ocean-themed room.
I can feel my hair getting pulled out of my scalp right now. Just talking about it.
Well, I don't remember getting my hair pulled. I felt
I would
edgy
walk
and
through
cool.
And it would just I have really curly hair, for those of y'all that don't know.
Giant hair.
So it would just get stuck in my hair, and it'd be as I walked through.
Walked in. I just remember feeling like I was Lizzie McGuire or something.
I still felt like hot
movie.
shit walking through the beads, being excuse me, this is my room, but it was our room.
The beads.
It wasn't my room, it was our room.
And they
still.
were dolphins. They were little dolphins hanging down. But what if you could do that with plants? What if you had
that'd be
string
so
of
cool.
hanging down?
Except for if you fuck it up,
right?
Excuse me, if you mess it up.
I mean, you would damage it. Obviously, this isn't plausible, but how cool would it look? So yeah. Anyways.
Sidebar over.
So Tate, tell us about your string of bananas. We're looking at it now, and she's looking awesome.
Yeah, we brought her in for some little inspiration. We'll definitely post a picture on our Instagram of our, plant collections and our plants that we talk about. So go ahead and give us a follow there if you want to see my beautiful string of bananas.
At Plant That Sis.
Yes,
that's our handle.
Plant That Sis. But you don't have to follow even if you just want to look, because she's that pretty. Anyways, so I got my string of bananas in probably around June. So like a little bit after Taryn got hers. And this is like separate. We didn't even talk about it. We just both happened to get one around the same time-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like at the store. I wasn't even shopping for plants. Isn't it funny how you don't shop for plants, but you just end up with like 3 or something?
It really doesn't matter if you're shopping for plants or shopping for anything else.
It's honestly evil.
We all know if there's plants around, you're going to get at least one. I will sometimes get the tiniest, cheapest one, so it makes me feel better about not spending money, but I can't help
Dude, yeah,
myself.
if you're a small business owner, just like buy some cheap little plants, and I bet people will buy them.
Totally.
Because I don't know, I always end up going to the plant aisle somehow, and then, you know, my boyfriend's like, we're not here to get plants, and I'm like, well, how about you go shop for whatever you're getting, and I'll just be here for a while.
Oh, that's my negotiation with Kyle, my husband. When I have to go to Lowe's, Home Depot.
Oh yeah, it's
I'm
always
like,
those.
Okay.
I'm like, you get your screws or whatever, but I'm gonna go to the plant section.
I will walk around and look at drill bits or whatever with you, but then you have to walk around and look at plants with me.
Literally, and that's literally what happened. So I was shopping. At this point, I don't even remember what the heck I was shopping for. But I was, you know, in the checkout, waiting in line, and of course, this is when COVID was happening. It's still happening, but everything was socially distanced, you know. So I was kind of like at the end of the line, and someone had put this string of bananas just like next to the Skittles or whatever, like next to like the candy. Like it obviously was not in the right spot.
A decision was made here moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take it. I could not resist. I literally couldn't resist.
It was probably like the clouds parted and the sun beamed down. I think she was calling your name.
Oh, I was having a moment. I was like, and I definitely like had been wanting one for so long. And I have, you know, honestly, I kind of like looked for them in the plant section and I couldn't find them. So I don't know if this was like a sign from God being like, take this plant, but it somehow ended up in the aisle that I was checking out in. So I got it. It was great. I was so happy, so excited. Couldn't resist buying it. So when I got home, I am not really like Taryn. Like when she gets home, you know, she's really good with her plants and will repot them. And
I mean, not anymore. I have so many at this point, it doesn't happen as fast.
Yeah.
And really, you're kind of not supposed to do that anyway, which we can talk about in another episode, but...
So yeah, so mine's still in its pot that I got it in. It's in like a little hanging pot. It's super cute. I mean, it's in like the plastic like nursery pot, but it's honestly hanging over at this point. You couldn't even tell if you were looking at it.
Yeah, there's really no point in worrying about it.
But yeah, so she's doing really well actually. And this is a plant that, you know, I hung it up outside. It got morning sun until around noon, and then in the afternoon it was in the shade, which was really good I think for us because we live where it's really hot. We live in Texas where it can easily be over 100 degrees like all of July. So
and August.
In August. In August. And even in September.
And
in
June,
July.
In May sometimes. I mean, really half
it's just
the year.
hot a lot.
We only have 2 seasons. It's all the way hot or all the way cold. And that's it. We never get the best seasons, which are fall and spring.
We get like 2 weeks of fall and 2 weeks of spring where it's like 70 degrees and it's nice and you can actually breathe. Mm-hmm. But then after that, it's cold or hot. So or both. Honestly, in the same day, it'll be cold in the morning and then 80 degrees in the afternoon and then 40 degrees in the evening. So
yep.
So it was outside, left it out there for a while. I just recently brought it back in, so now it's inside. I honestly am not sure what direction that window is, but it gets a lot of bright indirect light, pretty much. And it's in my bathroom, so the humidity hasn't been a problem yet. I'm going to keep watching it to see if the bathroom might be a little too humid for it, because it does usually like arid and dry, but right now it seems to be okay, and it's still growing a lot. It looks a little leggy. I think it's kind of getting used to its new spot.
I don't think it looks that leggy. I think it looks pretty good.
All right, well, that's good to hear. Yeah, and I definitely want to start propagating because I want more of them. That's kind of my story with this guy. I mean, she's been super, super easy. That's why I think we also wanted this to be one of our first plants of the month, is because if you are a beginner and new and want a cool, like, cascading, exotic-looking succulent, like, this is the way to go, I think. It's definitely sisters.
Geeks.
No, I was just going to say, like, if you want a string of plant, I would start with a string of bananas and not start with a string of pearls
100%.
like I did.
I think I definitely agree with you. This is in my experience, this is the easiest string of. Yeah. The only exception might be I did recently get a string of hearts, but that's not in the same.
Yeah, that's not a succulent, is it?
I don't know.
We're enthusiasts, guys. Yeah, we're not professionals.
We did research for the string of bananas, and that's already enough.
Yes, exactly.
We'll get to the we'll get to plenty of other plants later, obviously, but basically this is the easiest string of succulents that we have experienced.
Yes.
So,
and like, I mean, it's the big, I mean, we're going to talk about its care in a little bit, but the
Right
biggest
now.
thing it really needs, yeah, basically right now, but the biggest thing it needs is like a lot of sunlight. So if you are interested and you have a spot, a nice sunny little spot where it can go for it, I say.
So going into how to actually care for this plant, just a reminder, we are by no means professionals. This is not our full-time job where we have years and years of experience, but
I wish.
based on, I know, that's the dream, right? Based on our experience, though, here are the things that we have found. When it comes to watering this plant, I know we've already said a whole bunch that it doesn't like a lot of water. Super important to note. So what I would say, when I had this plant outside in the summer, I watered it a whole lot because we live in Texas. It's 100 degrees outside. We have to water things a whole lot more. But when it comes to keeping this plant inside, especially during the winter months, which is what we're in right now, it's December, you want to hold back on the watering. Every 2 to 3 weeks is kind of a good place to jump off from. I would say you could even probably push it to a month. You really want to give it the drought experience that it has in the wild. So you want to really let that soil dry all the way out in the middle. Something I think overall for watering too that I've learned, I know Tate said this, I'm a pretty regimented person. I do well when I give myself structure and stick to a schedule, but that's really not the best way to water your plants. If you are that person that needs that structure, it's great to have your, on Sundays, I'm going to go around and check my plants to see if they need water. That's a really
good
great
idea.
way to do it. So I'm going to check in this time every week or every 2 weeks or whatever it is for you. And you can kind of evaluate if it needs water before you start dumping water on things.
Yeah, don't be a helicopter water or helicopter parent.
Nobody likes helicopter parents. Just saying.
And your string of bananas definitely will not like a helicopter regimented watering routine.
She is a strong, independent woman.
Exactly.
Who don't need no man.
She's strong.
So
She's
leave her alone.
independent.
Something I think, too, that is helpful when trying to analyze your plant and see if it needs water. If you look at the bananas that are close to the base of the plant, so closest to the roots in the soil, you'll notice that when the plant starts to need water, those will get a little shriveled and wrinkly, and that's how you know it's starting to get pretty thirsty and you can go ahead and water. So that's a great thing to wait for to avoid overwatering. Again, these are drought tolerant. It is going to be significantly easier for these to bounce back from underwatering rather than overwatering.
And speaking of soil, the next thing that you'll need to know if you are going to plant one or if you want to repot it, etc., is the soil that this plant needs. So like we said, it lives in a dry and arid environment, so you don't want soil that will hold a lot of moisture. You want soil that will drain water out pretty quickly. You can either buy pre-made cactus or succulent soil, which I've done in the past, and my plants seem to really like it, and it seems to work fine. Or if you want to, be a little more hands-on,
A little
more fancy, you could make your own like cactus and succulent soil. You can do this by adding adding 2 parts potting soil, 1 part perlite, and 1 part sand. The perlite is just there. It's a kind of like a volcanic glass kind of rock material that does not absorb water. And basically what it's going to do is help the water kind of drain out of the soil. Same with the sand, obviously.
Perlite is those white, in really any soil you get, they pretty much always have perlite. It's those little white bits in there. So you've seen it before, you know what it is, you probably just didn't know the name.
Exactly, yeah. And then there's other things you could use too to aerate the soil and make it less moist or let it drain better. It could be things like orchid bark, pumice, leca, like we talked about in a couple episodes ago, charcoal, etc. Just things that will aerate the soil and allow water to drain out rather than holding on to it. Another really important thing for this plant is to have a drainage hole. You must have a way for the water to escape for this plant.
Required.
Like we said, it naturally grows in arid, dry environments. So if it's sitting in water, it will rot.
It's gonna die.
Yeah, exactly. This plant, like we said before, retains a lot of water. So if it retains too much water, it will start to rot. So basically just make sure you have good, well-draining soil and drainage holes in your pots.
You also want to make sure with watering that when this is in the wild, in its natural environment, We mentioned that it obviously doesn't get rain a lot, but then when it rains, it pours. So you want to make sure you do drench the soil when you water it. You want to make sure you don't just try to give it a little sip because you think it doesn't want a lot of water. You do want to make sure when it does get the water, because it doesn't happen very often, you soak all of the roots and let that water drain all the way through so that you know you have fully watered it and you're good and set for however long until the next watering.
Drench it and then leave it alone. Let it really dry out. If you aren't sure about it, like if you should water it or not, something you could always do is check the soil. If the soil is pretty dry, like 2 inches in, I usually just like dig my finger in the soil, which I know isn't like the most glamorous or nice thing to do, but if you are like not sure if you should water it or not, if you feel any kind of moisture in the soil, don't water it. Just
Don't do it.
Don't do it. You could even be bougie and buy like a moisture meter or something, but you don't have to do that. You can just check it with your hand, honestly.
Especially for this plant, I think moisture meters are helpful for other kinds of plants. Succulents, you just want to make sure they dry all the way out. So you want to let that soil get nice and dry.
Yeah, exactly.
Going hand in hand with the watering, talking about the lighting needs of this plant. I know we've already said this, they grow in the desert, meaning AKA they like lots of light. You don't want to put it in direct, intense, harsh sunlight because they can sunburn like my pale ass, but you definitely want it to have a lot of light. Like I mentioned, I know right now my string of bananas is not getting enough light, so you want to make sure it's getting consistent light for as much of the day as possible. I think especially at this time of year, you can put it in direct light, but just keep a real close eye on it and you'll notice it'll start to burn a little bit. It'll get kind of yellow or brown at the edges, even kind of red. I feel like it kind of turns a little bit red when it gets sunburnt. So just keep an eye on it. And if you notice it's getting a little bit sunburnt, then just pull it back another foot or two away from the window or maybe find a different spot where it won't get sunburnt. But it does like lots and lots of light. Something important to note too, just in general about plants, light and water goes hand in hand. So the more, in general, obviously lots of plants have different care tips and guides, or they would all work the same. But in general, the more light you give something, the more water it's going to need. The less light you give it, the less water it's going to need. So just kind of an easy rule of thumb to keep in mind when you're thinking of your watering quote unquote schedule, even though you're not going to do an exact schedule, and just placement. So knowing when you put something in a brighter area, it's going to want more water than something in a darker area, generally speaking.
And I honestly, like, I would say that's really good for I don't know, like succulents and cacti, I feel like are a little different because they just have evolved to grow in really intense, hot and dry environments. So even if you think it's been a long time since you watered it, if you're like Taryn and you like to water your plants a lot, just always check the soil. If you're questioning at all, just check the soil. If it's dry, go ahead and water it. If it's still kind of moist, leave it alone for a couple days.
So if you are somebody who has a string of bananas in your life and maybe she's not thriving, some tips or things that you can kind of look for to diagnose the problems. Something I like about succulents, and this succulent in particular, it's actually a little easier to tell what it needs. I know we've already kind of talked and laughed about the whole browning leaves can mean 8,000 different things, and it's super not helpful, especially if you're a beginner. Something nice about this is there are some kind of easy telltale signs to be able to know what's going on with your plant. This is just based off our experience. Again, not professionals, so do your research. Don't sue us for your plant deaths. When your string of bananas is overwatered, it's getting too much moisture, you'll notice that some of the bananas, especially near the base, will start to get mushy. Those leaves are absorbing too much moisture and they're unable to retain all of that moisture, so they start to get all misshapen and mushy. So that is a way to tell if it's overwatered versus when it's underwatered. You'll see this banana start to kind of shrivel and they'll get kind of hard and brown and crusty. So that's a big difference. That's an easy way to tell whether you're over or underwatering, which is kind of nice compared to some other plants where it's just yellow leaves and that doesn't help you at all. Common pest for this one is mealybugs. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of tips and tricks for how to deal with mealybugs. How to identify a mealybug, they are these little white, they almost just look like little bumps or dots on your plant. I've never seen them moving. I don't know if that's 100% accurate if they never move, but I've never noticed them crawling around or anything. I think a lot of people, especially beginners, expect pests to be really obvious and moving around, and that's not always the case, especially with mealybugs. And mealybugs in particular love succulents. I've never had mealybugs on my string of bananas specifically, but I have had lots of mealybug problems on my other succulents. I have a whole bunch that that got mealybugs outside on my patio, and I'm just leaving them out for the winter because I don't think they're going to bounce back anyway. So something you can do to get rid of mealybugs if you notice them. Ooh, actually, one more thing I want to say. Another way that you might be able to tell if you're having a mealybug problem is if when you look at the new growth, the new bananas that are happening at the end of the vines, if they look kind of malnourished or misshapen, deformed, anything like that, that can be a sign of pests, mealybugs in particular. So a way to get rid of mealybugs, a lot of people truly with this pest, you can just remove them. So you can just pull them off or knock them off and then hose the plant down or shower the plant down with water. What I have done in the past, because I've had this issue of I will see a white thing and freak out and think it's a mealybug, and come to find out it's just a piece of perlite from the soil.
Best case scenario.
Yeah, which is a relief, obviously. So something I've done in the past, you can get just some rubbing alcohol and put it on a Q-tip and then touch the little white dot that you think is a mealybug. And if it is a mealybug, it'll turn a little bit yellow. You can see the color change a little bit, and this will kill the bug. So you can put that on there, and then I would remove the bug, obviously, from the plant. I wouldn't leave it on there, but that's a way to tell. I've had several moments, I should say, where I've done that, and it stays white, and it's a huge relief because it's just a piece of freaking perlite.
Freak out for nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I haven't really had many mealybug problems on my plants, but I have noticed a little bit of leaves being like eaten off of. I can see, so I'm not sure if it's a mealybug, but if you bring it inside, it should be pretty okay.
Just want to note that this is an easy to propagate plant. I know I talked a little bit about my experience with propagations that I've had so far, but just to kind of recap, you can propagate cuttings of this plant. You can do it in soil or some other substrate, a combination of substrates. Again, a lot of people out there have different methods, but essentially we talked about how the little brown dots are the nodes where stems will grow out. So you just want to make, not stems, roots. Girl, stems and roots aren't the same thing. Y'all know
Plants
what I mean.
101.
So where the roots pop out, you just want to make sure that side is down touching the soil. And that's a way you can propagate. Another way you can propagate is by taking your cuttings, and at the bottom where you cut it off from the mother plant, you can remove some of those bottom bananas, because if you stick that in water, those will rot, which is gross, and that's not going to help your plant at all. So you want to take off some of those bottom bananas, and then you'll just stick that in some water in any kind of vessel that you can find around your house or whatever, and it will grow roots that way too. I am in the process of that, so I'll let you guys know how it goes for me.
Yeah, you gotta give us a status update.
I sure will. I think you can also technically, if you take just the individual banana itself, I think you can propagate those, and those might give you new plants, but that's going to take forever and a day.
Time.
So I don't know if that's really the best choice. It's, something you could explore, but I don't know if that'll give you the beautiful, luscious plant of your dreams.
Yeah, and I think these plants are pretty fast growing, so if you have a good established plant, if you just can cut off some of the longer stems, that would be a good way to propagate them. I also kind of think if you were to put an empty pot next to it full of soil and just let the plants kind of hang out in that soil next to it, they'll probably sprout some roots and attach themselves in that soil. And then once they're really good established there, you could probably cut it. And that could be a way to do it. Now that's kind of, might be a little more complicated, and I'm not really sure how that would look, but it's just another way.
I think it could look kind of cute.
Oh, yeah?
Have little baby pots underneath. Yeah, I feel like you could do
cool,
that.
Especially if it's hanging down and it goes low enough, and then maybe I'll try that. I don't know.
You should.
Why not?
Okay, update us. Let us know how it goes.
I will. We'll both have to have an episode where we update you guys on our propagation status.
Another just last little interesting fact about this plant.
Ooh, fact time.
Fun fact of the day. These plants, I think this applies to most of the cousins of this plant for sure. String of pearls, I think probably most of them have this, but if you look up close at the pearl or the banana or whatever it is, you'll notice there's a little stripe across it, a darker stripe, and that's kind of a window. It's a little window into the plant.
Ooh, that's cool.
And so essentially what happens, it'll take in extra light in that spot, and it's able to photosynthesize more or faster or something, and it helps the plant grow. So it's just an adaptation.
I think it basically like increases the surface area. So by having that little slit that allows light to penetrate through like the leaf, it increases the surface area of the leaf that is getting light. And light is basically what plants use to make energy or to make food for themselves.
Who doesn't want more food?
Exactly.
At any time.
Honestly, it's really smart.
Maybe I need a window into my soul for food.
Man, I don't need one. I probably don't need any more food intake.
So share with us what you think. We've told you about our situation. What y'all got going on?
Yeah, do you have a string of bananas currently, and how's it doing? Is it doing well? Is it not doing well? We would love to hear and see your string of bananas that you have.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you buy one, send us a pic.
Yeah, especially if you buy a new one. We want to see the progress updates.
We would love to see your progress updates. You could always tag us on Instagram or on Twitter at PlantThatSis. You could also email us any pictures or maybe any tips or tricks you found with your string of bananas.
Especially propagation.
Yes.
I'm looking for ways to propagate this a little better. So if you have a tried and true method that you can share, we would love to share it out to the plant community.
Exactly. We'd love to share it with everybody else. So go ahead and you could always tag us, like I said, on Instagram or Twitter. Or you could email us at plantthatsis@gmail.com.
That's all we have for today. Celebrating our SOB, string of bananas.
String of bananas.
What a great way to start. I love it.
Seriously, I think everybody listening, if you don't have one, get you one. They're so easy. They're, it's one of those plants you can sit it and forget about it. Put it in somewhere sunny.
It's
water it every couple
rewarding.
of weeks. It's just so cool to watch. And I personally love those cascading plants, so I love it.
You can blame it on us too. You can say we told you had to buy it. If that helps you in your situation, justify buying the plant.
They're just so pretty. I love them.
Okay, so for our next episode number 4,
Buffo,
we are going to do not breaking the bank on plants. So if you're like us and you find that all of your extra money that you don't have a lot of to begin with is disappearing.
Or if you just like literally don't have money like me.
If you find it disappearing into your plant collection and hobby, we are with you. We have the exact same problem. If you're one of those people that will really spend $80 on a cutting of a rare plant, oh my gosh, we envy you. We support you. We just want to be you, but not all of us can be you. So we're going to be talking through some of the most, I would say, affordable plants that give you the biggest bang for your buck, especially if you're looking to start a very foliage-heavy collection. We're also going to be sharing a couple penny-pinching tips that we've used and had to be a little creative to save that extra money on. And if you have any penny-pinching tips that you've experienced, we would love to hear it from you. I know we already told you our contact info. Just want to throw out there, you can also find us on our website at plantthatsis.com. And we would love to hear from you. So check us out next week for our Don't Break the Bank on Plants. Hope you guys are surviving, ready to get through this year, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Goodbye.